awkward. Man,
Hey.
like close to people. What is ooh?
This is awkward?
Yes, like man, close. Myrna is probably like ooh, push back.
Hey, what's up? Janelle, come over here. We gotta get.
Why?
Listen, she doesn't listen. No one can tell her what to do. You hear this? Come over here. Get
like,
awkward with me.
Awkward. Okay.
Let's get in there real close. It's Friday.
Aye.
Hey,
Hi. How are you doing?
what's going on?
Do you want to talk to us today?
Yeah, you're good at that. Oh man.
Imagine somebody. Oh my gosh, that sounded weird.
But it's follow up Friday. We normally just do it like an open follow up Friday,
Aye.
but we got to follow up on a
We
follow
look so
up.
weird. Oh my gosh.
It's like follow up squared. Follow up on the follow up.
Yeah.
So we're minding our own
Wow,
business.
that was math, y'all.
Yeah,
Wow.
not cubed. Squared. So we're over here minding our own business doing a radio show. Okay?
Yeah.
And we're talking about a legit question that came up that we talked about for a while this morning about we don't want to lose sight of the fact that Christmas is Jesus' birthday. We don't want to lose sight of that.
Very important.
We also don't want to like become the people who ruin everybody's Christmas by going, "Oh, you can't afford gifts? Who cares? It's Jesus' birthday. It's not about you." Or stop having a tree and making cookies. It's about Jesus, not about your cookies. Like people just ruin Christmas. So where's that line, that balance? So this wonderful grandmother, Darlene
Yes.
Darlene from Akron calls in. She's a grandmother, African American from Akron. I'm saying that because it matters in the story. She talks about this. Her son passed away in his 30s, a horrible thing. But in the midst of that, she got the blessing of now raising her 3 grandchildren. Praise the Lord. So they love Jesus. Sounds like she's raising them to love Jesus and honor him and serve him. But they decide, let's go to the mall and go see Santa.
Yeah.
Big deal. My kids have done that. It's fine. No big deal. We're not going to ruin Christmas for people here. They go up, and it's a white Santa. It matters to the story. The kids want to get up on Santa's lap. He's like, "Oh, sorry, no, your kids can't sit on my lap. I got knee problems." And so one of the kids is so distraught about this. They can't sit on the lap. It's been waiting in line for. The kid starts crying right there. The picture's the kid crying and all this. They're walking away, turn around. Lo and behold, a group of white kids who are big climb right up on Santa's lap. Same Santa who has knee problems and can't have kids on his lap. So the grandmother takes the picture and then talks about her reaction to it, explaining to her grandkids. And I could not just move on. I could not just move on.
Oh my gosh.
Can you? You can't move on from this.
No.
Although it's fatiguing, it's exhausting to keep talking about all this stuff.
It is exhausting because you get the whole, when stuff like this happens, even for the grandmother, you get the whole explanation of people dismissing it or people questioning you or people saying, well, maybe you thought you saw something. So I think that's why a lot of people that experience stuff like this, even they want to just move on. They don't want to talk about it. Pastor Tanks touched on that one time about how it's weary. People don't want to deal with it because it's emotionally exhausting to experience it, and then you deal with people's reactions. People don't believe you, or they say
we got
you
that text.
Yeah.
Will you read that? I don't know because I don't know if it's exhausting to even have to read it.
Well, this one just came in. You haven't seen this one. Brian said earlier today that he likes to debate. So for the sake of being thorough, there are other plausible explanations. For example, maybe the children were heavier, exasperating his bad knee. They smelled bad, were unruly. Maybe he was tired and irritable, had just had a bad experience, or knew the children who came after the black family and treated them preferentially. These explanations, which are not necessarily any more likely than racism, are equally unacceptable. In a sensitive position such as Santa Claus, one has to be extra careful with the feelings of children, and if he's unable to fulfill that responsibility for whatever reason, he should be let go. She goes on to say, to be clear, I don't doubt the grandmother's explanation. She was there, but there are other possibilities for Santa's bad behavior.
And also said, and I appreciate this, and regardless of whether the incident was racism is real and is horrible. Okay, fair enough. But somebody else texted something like, I don't even know if we can find it.
Let me see. The grandmother showed her how to react with control.
Well, but regardless, the person's like, look, maybe it wasn't racism. Look, okay, fine. Maybe it wasn't. So, I mean, what's the point of saying that? Like, I get so frustrated by this. It could have been that. But what reasonable person wouldn't come to the conclusion that when 3 young black children aren't allowed on white Santa's lap because of knee problems, and very quickly thereafter large white children get on his lap, that's 1 + 1 = 2, is it not?
Yeah.
And okay, so how does it feel?
Here
Let's
it
say it
is.
happens
Is it
to
this
you.
one?
Oh, you found it? Okay.
So I'm wondering maybe it wasn't due to the skin color, or maybe it was, but I thought possibly the children were much too big to sit on his lap, and that is the reason why he asked them not to sit on his lap. I don't like when people are guilty before proven guilty. Before proven innocent.
So let's say it's your kids, and I go, Janelle, maybe it wasn't that. I want to empathize, I want to love my neighbor, you're my neighbor, so what happens in your mind when you hear that?
It's hurtful, it feels dismissive, it feels like you don't care, but more importantly, it feels like you don't trust me. If I'm a grown person, we're friends, and I tell you this is what happened, this is what I saw, this is what I experienced, and it hurt, to that initial reaction, well, maybe it's not, all of that stuff makes me feel like, so you don't think I'm smart enough to distinguish? That's what it makes, that's my first reaction,
So it's essentially, and you said it beautifully, but essentially like, oh, okay, I get it, you think I'm stupid.
Yeah.
Doesn't that send that message?
Yeah.
Oh, you thought it was all about race because that's all you people think about.
Yeah.
Maybe it wasn't this time. It's harsh to say that, but that's what it feels like, right?
But somebody could be listening and think, we're not perfect, we can misinterpret things. So if you really in your heart felt like there are other ways to look at this, do you think it's ever okay to bring it up? Maybe not at first, but do you think we should ever say, there are other ways you could look at this?
Because what that person wants us to do is assume it's not.
Right.
Our first assumption needs to be, it's not racism.
Yeah.
Oh, it must just be, oh, our kids are real big.
Well, that's a big accusation, racism. I think that's why people aren't comfortable with that.
I mean, what in the world is a guy with a bad knee doing being Santa? Seriously.
That's all you do is put kids on your lap.
That's part of the job.
Yeah.
It's like me going, oh, I don't like microphones, but I want to be in radio. Microphones, they bother me.
Yeah.
Please, it's part of my job.
Yeah.
I can't say that.
Pastor Tanks in the house, he says another insult to cover up racism. He said some white people just can't truly believe or want to believe that racism is dead. Sandy says Santa should be ashamed and lose his job. Callie says it's heartbreaking. Could Santa maybe have taken a picture of himself and the kids standing next to him if they were quote unquote too heavy?
But there were 3 kids. One of her grandkids is like 2. Right? Isn't that what she said? 2 or 3, something like that?
Yeah.
What 2 or 3-year-old have you seen?
Mike says he has 2 knees.
That's what Mike said.
Go ahead.
But you know what I mean? Like, oh, come on. So, okay, let's say there's a 15-year-old that's enormous.
Yeah.
Like your 15-year-old is 6'3" or something.
6'4".
I get it. Go like, hey, son, stand over here. Hand me the 2-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, there are many ways to solve this. And she took a picture, and she saw large white children. Not in an insulting sense, but she's trying to say proportionally, it can't be my grandchildren's weight.
Yeah.
Because they are bigger.
They were bigger, yeah. So this is one example, but what are your thoughts on how we should react to injustice? We talked about Luke 11:42 when Jesus is interacting with a Pharisee and pointing out their hypocrisy. And in one of the things he calls out, he says, "But woe to you, Pharisees! You give a tenth of mint, rue, and every kind of herb, and you bypass justice and love of God." So our reaction to justice, because justice obviously, maybe I'm not defining it right, but it's when something wrong is happening to someone else. I'm sure that's what Jesus was talking about.
Well,
not
I mean,
you.
yes and.
Okay. So let's focus then on when it's injustice to somebody else. If
Sure.
you're standing in line, or if it's your white kid that's about to sit on their lap, you don't know me. What do you do?
And I see it happen.
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible that family didn't see it happen.
It's very possible. It
Didn't connect
happens
the
all the
dots.
time. Yeah.
But if I see right in front of me black children refuse to be put on Santa's lap, and then suddenly he's putting my kids on his lap, I think it's my obligation to say something.
As a Christ follower.
Yeah, say, whoa, excuse me, I'm sorry, Santa. I thought your knees were bad. Or, why do my kids get to sit on your lap?
Well,
why is it your problem to deal with it, not mine?
Some of it, and I don't want this to come out the wrong way. I've been very Americanized. I've been here since I was 3, but I noticed differences. There's this thing in our culture, and I don't think it has to do with ethnicity, like black, white. We mind our own business. We don't do that. Hispanics don't. And it can be a bad thing sometimes. But we're very much about you mind your own business. You see it when there's crime happening. I've heard it in cities like New York. People will see stuff and not do anything, and it's this thing of like, especially if it's, let's say, domestic abuse happening in front of you, people are very much about, that's not your business, mind your own business. So maybe it's some of that. Maybe it's not that you don't care about the injustice. You don't think we're kind of caught up in our own world?
I think we
all
are.
Of us.
But that's why I think that's our natural sin proclivity, is to be self-focused.
Yes, yeah.
But Jesus makes it abundantly clear multiple times that we're to be other-centric. Again, for simplicity's sake, what's the greatest commandment? Jesus, what's the most important thing? Tell me, teacher. 2 things. Love God, love your neighbor.
Yeah.
Didn't say anything about you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think there is an obligation of collective concern for the oppressed and for justice in these situations. Not just giant injustice. It is that, but it's not just that. It's also these little situations.
Yeah.
And I know I get so fired up about this stuff, but it's like Jesus was looking at these Pharisees saying, look at how religious you think you are. Oh, you're very special with your little tithe. Good job with your tithe. And look at you not being religious. You're not caring about justice. He's trying to say, good for you, you're tithing, but it's more important that you care about justice. And yet here we are in 2019 when a lot of people are more concerned about their personal journey with Christ than about injustices happening to other people made in God's image around them.
Yeah. Yvonne says, hey Yvonne from Shaker. She says, it feels like, in terms of your question on how does it feel when someone dismisses it or questions, she says it feels like your intelligence is being insulted.
Yeah, condescending, rude.
So we have that, maybe not, some of us not as much, but you have that where people come and say, man, you said, you have a story from somebody in Chicago that came and something happened to them and they shared it with you in terms of racism, like an event happened.
Oh, the gas station one?
Yeah.
So
I guess where I wanted to go here, just for all of us, is how do you react when maybe you didn't see it, but there's a story?
But even before we get there, though, I want to get to that.
Yeah.
If we're going to be fair and we honor discussing things from multiple perspectives, isn't it possible that there could be a situation that you and Len perceive as racism and it's really not?
It's very possible.
So I'm not allowed. So
what do you do then?
So I'm going to play devil's advocate in this.
Yeah.
So what? I'm not allowed to have you think critically then by asking you if it's about race or not?
I think that in those situations there's wisdom, and I think sometimes when we react at first and question and bring up the other side, and maybe it's a lot about us and our point. And if we make it more about the other person, we're slower to get to that point, and we listen. Because I don't care what your perception is, you were hurt. And if you care, you would listen.
So you're saying essentially, it is okay, of course. Like it's not as if incidents of racism are things that can never be questioned, and accusations all that's necessary. You're not saying that.
No.
What you're saying is that I need to respect and honor that you are hurt.
Yeah.
And whether or not that was even the intention, I need to honor and respect you and love you enough to go that you perceived it this way.
Yeah.
And then trust you and ask questions maybe.
Yeah.
Talk about the situation. But at some point, would it be permissible for me after I've done that?
I think so.
To ask you a question like, isn't it possible? Is it possible that it was a weight issue? Like maybe like your kids are huge, and you could go, well, no, Brian, here's why that's not the case. Huh?
I think it's It's good to bring it up, but you need to ask yourself: have I earned my way into share my opinions in this? you know, if you're not close enough to a person and then you're white and you're questioning their perspective, like let's say it happens at work, it could end up just being more hurtful and not really get to the point. That's a very, you know why? Because our reaction to situations are from baggage. So you don't know what they went through in terms of racism the last 20 years. And you just came in the picture a month ago because I work with you. And now you're coming and saying, well, you know, maybe it was because they're overweight. I don't know you. And you might make, as a Christian, the situation worse. And if you're really trying to win people, I think it's better to just listen. Now, if you're close enough, like you and me, you hear me out first and validate my feelings, because I think you trust me enough to know either way you were hurt.
And we've done this before,
Yes,
actually.
yeah, we have.
Offline, and things that probably will never be discussed on here, but
Yeah.
it's things where I've had permission from you, essentially, not
Yeah.
explicitly, but to go, yeah, you believe me that racism exists and that you've been hurt, but I can actually ask you critical thinking questions to really try to find out if that's what's happening
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
And you're not going to walk away thinking I'm a jerk.
And why do we want to do that? Because, to be honest, and I'm not speaking for all black people, I'm Hispanic, my husband's black, so I'll just speak from our point of view. Our daily interactions and the way we perceive things is colored a lot by prior valid racist incidents. And so it could make you look at one situation and say, see, that was racism, just to summarize it. And it really isn't. So I think it is helpful to, as a friend, say, maybe this time it's not. Do you see what I'm saying?
And it's
Because
also-
I'm not
yeah.
objective. I'm not a robot. So it is
Your
my
biases come in.
Yes, and my experience, prior experiences, etc.
And then I have to take that into account, and with empathy and understanding and grace, realize that the reality of racism may have clouded the current moment.
The current moment, right?
And by me, if I just start with questioning you,
Yes.
I'm invalidating all the past experiences. Right?
Yeah. Mark says, as horrible as this incident is, it's an example of man's heart and what the Bible tells us about ourselves. This kind of thing exists all over the world. Where I attended church years ago, we supported a missionary in Haiti. He told us that there's a prejudice that some Dominicans people have for Haitians. Yes, there is, and it's horrible. This exists in Asia too,
It does.
as well as all over the world.
Yep.
The Bible teaches us to judge among ourselves, and the world will do what it does. Of course, this is wrong, and we should oppose it. God will fix this in His appointed time.
Yeah,
this
it's
is-
yes and
yeah.
it's both. Yes, God, this will be eradicated in the new heavens and new earth. But that doesn't give us a pass to not deal with it now.
Yeah.
And that's what this person is saying. And that's an important point too. We've talked about this, but he wisely mentioned Dominicans specifically because you're Dominican.
Yeah.
And there's a thing on the island of Hispaniola, geographically.
Yeah.
The island of Hispaniola contains two countries, and there's like a line in the middle of it.
And
Haiti, Dominican Republic.
1/3 of the island is Haiti, and 2/3 is Dominicans. And just to give you background, the relationship between Haitians and Dominicans is very complicated. It's not all race. Some of it's political. When Dominican Republic became independent of Spain, years later, Haiti took over. Haiti was like over DR. So if you go to Dominican Republic, there are 2 Independence Days. One from Haiti, one from Spain. So there's that. But I think most of it, it's race. There was slavery in DR. There's racism in DR. And it's like,
And it's wrong.
it's super wrong. It's messed up. And I call it out when I see it. I think it's messed up. And we don't talk about it. It's like this underlying, we don't talk about it as much as we do in this country. And it's messed up.
And
And
I
I've
remember-
experienced some of it from other Dominicans. There's white Dominicans and black Dominicans. And yeah, I've experienced it. It's horrible.
Well, and I remember having an in-depth discussion with an exchange student in my undergraduate degree, a couple of exchange students from Singapore, and they were able to break down for me racial stratification ethnically in Asia. And I'm not going to pretend that I know it exactly if I remember it verbatim,
Yeah.
but he talked about how certain nationalities of Asian people were viewed as better than others. And he went down this long list where there's like people at the bottom of the list. So this is very true. It exists all over the world in different contexts. It's not just a black and white thing.
So what do we do with that?
However, though,
Yeah.
that's not to say that the black American experience isn't unique,
How is it unique?
because of the horrible institution of American slavery sets apart the African American experience from all other types of racism. Does it not?
I think it does, but that's not very well received. Well, you know?
It is truly
It is true.
unique.
Yeah.
truly unique.
There's slavery, but then there's the Jim Crow era. It's very
Well,
complicated.
and there's
the,
historic slavery, and then there's American slavery.
yeah,
Very different
very
institutions.
different. Yes.
So,
That brings up, but I don't know if you want to get there. Like, I like this email, but let me know later if you want me to
it's
share.
your call.
Really? Okay, I'll think about it. Carissa says, unfortunately, this is the life of a brown-skinned person. I don't remember it happening to me as an elementary child, but high school, we had major race issues that were targeted to the Polish students, which opened my eyes to the issue. And I've had my own issues throughout my adulthood, and I'm always quick to not pull the race card, but when others see it for what it is, then it must be true.
Yeah, you know, and that's a good point. There are ethnic groups in Northeast Ohio that have experienced persecution, and it's not just African Americans. Polish people have had a rough go of it in various continents. Poland's history is one of oppression, and there's certainly that here as
Jews
well.
and Asians. But this brings up then the email that came in. Somebody emailed us during our discussion on the radio show. And she says, I'm Asian American, and it took me until after college to realize and care about the unique pain that Black people go through in our society. It took intentional conversations and the Holy Spirit. I believe both, do you want to say this part?
I don't care.
Both Democrat and Republican Christians can care deeply for the story of the minority. I believe the kind of courage that speaks clearly into the issue of race will help draw the younger generations to Jesus.
Yeah.
I love what she said. She was very intentional. My favorite is she said intentional conversations. And I guess what I wanted to ask you is if somebody's listening to this and this email from an Asian American listener that realized, oh my gosh, there's a unique experience. If somebody's listening to you, why does it matter that we acknowledge that there's a unique experience? Like, let's say Asians versus Blacks. And how do you get to the point where she's at? Like, based on your experience?
Well, it's...
And does it even matter? Like, should we even
No,
seek
I mean,
that?
it does matter because I love history, and so that's the easy one for me.
Okay.
Our present and our future are like a collective consequence of our story, our history.
Mm-hmm.
And truly, those things can build up and create a storyline for me that's totally different than you. And like, I can look at even just back a few generations and see how the experience of my great-grandparents was distinctly different than Len's.
Yeah.
And they may have, Scandinavians didn't have a rough go of it, so it's not a good example. But somebody could say the Irish
Yeah.
had a rough go of it
Yeah.
for a certain period of time. Japanese Americans
Oh,
in
yeah.
the 1940s had a rough go of it. But it doesn't compare to the unique experience of the African American.
Why should we care?
Because it matters in the reality of how people have lived their lives, and the stories and their perceptions are all a result of our histories. And histories matter. And they create us into who we are today.
Yeah.
And acknowledging that reality is how we're able to better function in the present and build a future that's more Christ-like.
What are your thoughts on what she said about clearly understanding this, both parties, if you want to make it political, just all Christians will help draw in the younger generations. Do you agree?
I do, because...
Draw in the younger generations to Jesus. Do you agree with that?
Yes. And because younger people, whether we like it or not, are passionate about diversity. Passionate about diversity. And they look at older people like us and people older than us, and what they see is they think that we are ignorant of this stuff,
Yeah.
and that we don't care about it. And here's the good news. Jesus cares about it.
Yeah.
And so, you know what? If young people care desperately about talking about issues of race and unfairness and discrimination, God has lots to say about it. So why can't we talk about it? If it's going to bring them closer to Jesus and break down barriers that enable them to surrender their lives to our Lord and Savior, why wouldn't we emphasize it?
Yeah.
But I think generational experience impacts feelings on this. There are, I've talked to older African Americans who have seen such progress over time that they go, what you all complaining about?
Yeah, I've seen that.
Because
Yeah.
you know what? Guess what? I was alive when it was way worse than this, and this
Yeah.
is great. And then there's
Yeah.
young African Americans who go, whoa, you can't just settle for this. You see, like,
Yeah.
our histories and our present and our stories all dictate how we perceive our present.
What about in terms of this email that a listener sent? She's Asian American. Oh, I wanted to ask you about what kind of intentional conversations would what do you think that looks like in the context of what we're talking about? If you're a person that's not affected by this, you haven't seen it, but you care. If you're like, man, this is wrong what happened to this grandmother. I want to understand more. Who are the intentional conversations with? How do you even start? What does it look like?
Well, you start by building a relationship that doesn't center around issues of race.
Mm-hmm.
Because you got to, like you've talked about many times, we have to build trust and authenticity first.
Yeah.
I don't want you to think that you are becoming my pet project to understand things better, and it's your job to make me understand it.
Yeah. Or that you expect me to talk for all black people, because that's offensive too. Like,
I want to, authentically, I want you to know authentically I care about you as a human being. Sarah and I want to be friends with you and Len, and get your advice on parenting and learn about your relationship with Jesus. And guess what? Over time, that'll earn me the right to have harder discussions with you on this.
Yeah.
It's not just go find the black guy at the office and make him speak for all black people.
Wow.
But Kathy brought up something, I don't know exactly, I haven't read it yet, but.
Which one, Kathy? Oh, right here.
What about the incident in New Jersey?
In New Jersey, people, Joy Behar in particular, were quick to blame white supremacists, and clearly it was not. Also, the attack clearly targeted at Jewish deli, and that was downplayed. It's not just a black-white issue.
Yeah, Kathy.
Yeah, we just mentioned Irish and Japanese, and even around the world.
And this is exactly why we can't just go, oh, it's not a race issue, it's a sin issue. No, it's a sin issue because it's a race issue, because racism is a sin. And so whether it is, and I've read articles on this too, you're absolutely right, the Jewish deli thing was horrible.
What was that?
There's guys who attacked a Jewish deli, as kosher deli, just because it's Jewish.
The shooting, yes. Oh, I didn't realize that was deli.
And that is equally as despicable as what happened to the grandmother who called our show this morning.
Yeah.
You see, so, like...
When we always talk to Dr. Rydell, like the stuff his family went through, like his brothers, remember the story in New York?
His brother's blind in one eye because he had a bottle thrown in his face because he's Jewish.
Just because he's Jewish, yeah.
So, and Michael's family was killed in Auschwitz.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, we care about,
Yeah, but that is the important point. It isn't just a black-white issue. There are other ones. However, we can't use it as an excuse to not address black-white issues, because guess what? In our cultural context in America, the most prominent racial tension isn't white and Jewish, isn't white and Asian. It is black and white.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
And whether we like that or not doesn't make it less true.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
I think so.
No, it doesn't invalidate or make it like good that happened at a Jewish deli. It makes it despicable that it happened. But what we don't do is dismiss black and white racism by going, oh, well, there's other types of racism too. Yeah, of course there is. And we as Christians, as the scriptures indicate, ought to care about justice. You quoted from Luke today. I don't care what color or race we're talking about. When there's injustice, we have an obligation to talk about it.
Yeah.
And confront it.
Yeah.
So good point, Kathy. I'm with you on that.
Mike
fired up
says
about this.
mistake it being racist, but common sense says. Mike says it is possible to mistake it being racist, but common sense says this is not the case in this situation with the grandmother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, great stuff. We do got to run.
Yep.
Family, hate to tell you that, but we got lots on our agenda for today.
Have a good weekend.
Yeah. I didn't know we were going to talk about this today. I love when that stuff
I know.
happens. But God bless you. Don't forget, Monday morning, we're back at it. More Christmas music, conversation. You don't want to miss it, right?
You know, Robert says, my dude, Brian, he's giving you a shout out, Robert Finn.
What's up, Robert?
Yeah.
I've heard Len's planning something for us, Robert, but
He hasn't told
he hasn't told me
everybody.
anything about it.
Robert, look out for Len's text. He probably heard from Len already.
Later, family.